Here we go. On behalf of Bryant's Alumni Association, welcome to the second of a series of webinars designed to share alumni professional experience with Bryant graduates and students. Before I turn the program over to our presenter today, Elizabeth Beth Carter, and our facilitator, Rita Williams-Bogar, I need to provide you with some ground rules for today's webinar, which will last for about an hour. All participants are in a listen-only mode. However, we encourage you to comment and ask questions using the question and answer feature located in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. After today's presentation, you'll receive a survey. Please take a moment to provide your feedback. Your comments are always valuable as we expand our professional development programs for our alumni. At this point, I want to turn the program over to Rita Williams-Bogar, class of 1976. Her company, Personal Development Solutions, provides consultative services to business and individuals in the areas of leadership development, emotional intelligence, ethics, diversity, and insurance technical education. Rita is a member of Bryant's Board of Trustees and is also Vice President of our Alumni Association. Take it away, Rita.
Thank you, Tim. I hope everybody's doing well today, wherever you are. I'm in a sunny place this afternoon. So welcome to Alumni, and it is my pleasure to be moderating this webinar for Beth Carter, class of 1985, as our speaker today. Beth graduated with a degree in business administration with a concentration in business communications, and she has an MBA from Baruch College. Currently, she owns Carter Consultants Limited, an international executive search firm, and Beth Carter Enterprises, an executive business and career coaching company. Beth is a certified professional coach and certified professional resume writer and is an adjunct professor in the Executive Development Center at Bryant. She also serves on the National Alumni Council. Beth has conducted many presentations and workshops, has her own blog, and has blogged for the Huffington Post. I'm happy to turn the microphone over to Beth and today's presentation on the good, the bad, and the ugly of working from home. Beth, it's all yours.
Thanks, Rita. I'm so excited to be doing this webinar today. This is actually the third one I've done for Bryant. It's a great group of people we have. Not only do we have many different classes that are on this webinar today, but they are from all over the country, so that's absolutely terrific. Of the three webinars I've done, I have to say that I have the most expertise in this particular topic because I've been working out of my home for over 25 years. So we're going to get started here. As you can see, these are the objectives that we're looking to cover today. You know, your personality does come into play if you are capable of working out of your home or thinking about doing it, and even the way you work. So we're going to talk about that. Have some interesting stories to tell you about some of the distractions that I have faced and how to eliminate those. Why it is important that you have your own water cooler and how you reach out to others. Identifying some resources, and again, some of those might be a little surprising to you, and then also thinking about other considerations. So we do, as I said, have quite a wide range of people on this call today. Some people are, self-employed like myself. Maybe, started out thinking being self-employed, starting part-time, and then working into full-time self-employment. Certainly consultants. And then those that are working in corporations that might be telecommuting, hoteling, or flex time. Some people might not be aware of hoteling, but that's when companies don't want to have a lot of office space, so you kind of call ahead and you have a desk at the office, but most of the time you work out of your home. Startups, of course, as I mentioned, people who are in part-time mode, telemarketers, and then some people that are maybe seeking new opportunities because of unemployment. The great thing about working out of your home, of course, and this was partly for my reasoning, is that the cost factor. Needless to say, there's very few costs when you're working out of your home, and we'll talk about some of those as we go through the webinar. So let's get started with a poll just to kind of see, what you feel are your biggest challenges if you thought about working from home or you're currently working from home. So let's start this poll.
The poll is open.
So the thing is that, working out of your home, there's a lot of different factors. A lot of people think it's great because you can get the laundry done, you can get, go to stop off at the supermarket, get some errands done in between. But as we're going to talk about, there's a lot of different factors that really can hinder you doing a really good job and staying focused, and most importantly, staying motivated, because there's definitely days when it's beautiful outside or whatever that may, come into play, and that you're just not putting your full work style in place. And I'm seeing that we're starting to get some responses to the poll. Is that correct, Tim?
Yes,
We
we are.
are.
We are,
Yeah.
Beth. We're getting some responses, and the biggest one so far is outside distractions.
Let's share those results with everybody.
Okay.
There we go. So Rita, yeah, it
Great.
looks like
Yes, I
it
see
looks like you're
outside.
right. Outside distractions, absolutely.
Yeah, 37%. It'll be interesting if folks type in what some of those distractions may be, like the weather, or is it other people who are coming by, or people who think, well, you're working from home, so I can interrupt you. A significant portion. And I know, Beth, you'll talk about that. Some time wasters. Hmm. That also could be other people or connected to distractions. And then a significant part, all of the above. It's interesting, the smallest number being the personality and work style of the folks who have voted.
All right, well, we're going to start talking about personalities, so we'll go from there. So one suggestion before, if you are thinking about working out of your home, and maybe it's an option, not required by your company, is to take a personality assessment like an MBTI. And the MBTI is, answers the questions on kind of identifying your preferences for where you get your energy, how you take information in, how you make decisions, kind of how your world works. And if you're interested in learning more about the MBTI, Rita actually is a facilitator on that. I'm actually a facilitator on the DISC assessment, which is a behavioral assessment tool. It kind of answers it answers the questions on how you behave. So if you're understand better on how you behave, you can interact better with others. Why is this important? Well, a lot of people will tell you that extroverts are not good at working out of their homes. I don't necessarily think that's a fair statement, and it's quite a huge generalization. I think extroverts just need to make sure that they have outside interaction with people, maybe more so than introverts. But I think any personality or any type of person can work out of their home. It's just, again, being cognizant of all of that. The other thing that I can strongly suggest to you is to speak with others. There's definitely probably pros and cons that we will not cover on this webinar that you need to be cognizant of, and to make sure that this is really going to work for you. Some people, and I have friends who have done this, they're gung-ho about working out of their home, and the next thing you know, they are pulling their hair out, either because they just feel so isolated, or they're just not getting their work done, or again, the distraction factor. I'm the type of person that, not to look at the glass half empty, but you definitely have to figure out what the challenges are that you may face, and we're going to cover a lot of those today. So the idea is that if you know those challenges ahead of time, or know what the issues are going to be, either personally or outside of even your control, then you can better face them and really come up with some solutions ahead of time. Because I've even been on phone calls where things have happened that I didn't anticipate, and how do you kind of still stay professional while you're working out of your home. And then the last piece is, recognizing how you motivate yourself. And I'm a true believer in rewards. I mean, I am an executive recruiter. There's days that I have to make 50 phone calls. I am not kidding. I literally have a list of going through the 50 phone calls. And it's hard sometimes to really motivate yourself to do something like that. So I break it down into smaller chunks, like maybe 10 to 20 calls in a stretch. And then I'll say to myself, okay, I'm going to go get something to drink, or go outside for 15 minutes, or take a walk around the block. So if you're the type of person that needs some kind of outside motivation, I strongly suggest figuring out what kind of rewards would make it beneficial to you, that, hey, if I get X done, then I can treat myself to Y. So let's talk about the way you work.
I love this, Beth.
So this gentleman, I don't know how well you can see the picture, but he is actually in Star Wars PJs. Um, everyone works differently as we've talked about, but the funny thing is that I was surprised when I got together with a group of other recruiters. This was going back a few years. We were at a dinner, and we all worked out of our homes, and it came out that several people work in their pajamas, in their beds, which I found very interesting. I don't know how you can smile and dial and call people and take notes in your bed, but some people can do that. But the thing is that you really have to make sure that the level of professionalism is there. And I think if you dress the part, you act the part. And it may be jeans still or sweatpants or whatever, but in the world of Skype today too, I luckily have not been caught too many times where someone has turned around at the last minute and say, hey, instead of let's do a phone call, let's do a Skype call. But it has happened that I've had to dress the part because I am in front of Skype. So really, make sure that you be cognizant of that. The other thing is that I find that people, I can tell when I'm on an interview with someone, and usually my interviews are about an hour on the phone, if someone is walking around or doing something else. Actually, I was on a call yesterday. I think the woman was opening some kind of door. So you have to really make sure that the way you work is, keeps that level of professionalism. I mean, I understand there's standing desks now and things like that, but, try it out first. Get on the call with a friend or something and make sure that's what works for you. I've also, and I admit it, I've been in my paint clothes, let's say, and then I have a Skype call later, so the top half of me is all dressed up, with makeup and jewelry and all of that, and the bottom half still has my paint clothes on. The only issue with that is that at times, for whatever reason, you may want to stand up or just kind of move around, and you just don't want someone to see the back of behind you. The other thing, too, is be careful of what is behind you. A lot of people are working, and we're going to talk about location in a minute of your office, but I've seen the back of other people on Skype calls, things that really are not professional. A lot of people don't necessarily need to know that you work out of your home. You may not want them to know that you work out of your home. So you have to really be cognizant of what is being viewed by others when when it's on a Skype call. So
And Beth,
let's
that's
talk.
an excellent point too, because I've seen people where their background showed a lot of clutter, and if they're having an interview by Skype, then the interviewer is thinking this person is disorganized. So being aware of what perception is being created by what's around you also.
Very true, Rita. And I mean, I always tell people when I'm prepping them if they're going on an interview is to, practice, especially with Skype, because a lot of people don't recognize that, like with laptops, I tend to put mine on a book or something just to raise the laptop up so it looks, again, more professional. But then again, I have to be cognizant of what's behind me at that level versus when the laptop is on my desk. So, or the angle that my laptop is in. So yeah, there's a lot of different factors here, but again, I always tell people try it out first before you do it in a professional setting. So let's talk about my favorite topic, distractions. So the thing with distractions is what you may not recognize is that there are, different things that are distractions that don't come up at the most opportune times. So, barking dogs, again, I've been on many interviews where all of a sudden a dog barks because someone has shown up at the front door. But it can be something as simple as cats, too. And people are like, well, cats are kind of quiet. But I have several cats. It never fails that I'll be on a Skype call or a regular conference call with someone. It never fails it's overseas, so there's an accent, and I'm trying to understand what they're saying, and I'm trying to take notes. And all of a sudden, the next thing you know, I have the Kitty 500 going on outside my door because they're running up and down the hallway. So not that you can schedule your calls around your pet's nap times, but the point being is if you do have an animal in your home or animals that can be loud at times, I would strongly suggest you put them in another room and they also like to visit. It never fails that, and I keep my door closed, but it never fails that, they walk on keyboards or they think you're talking to them, so they start talking to you and all of that. So again, just make sure that your pets are in a safe place, but also away from your office setting. The next one, again, and these are all true stories I'm telling you, so this is not something I'm just creating, but family, friends, and neighbors can be huge distractions. You know, right now, a lot of schools are off. They were either, elementary and high school students were off for February break, or now the college students are off for March break. Kids' vacations can cause a huge problem when you work out of your home. My office I used to live in Connecticut. My office was above my garage, so it was kind of separate. But now I'm in Rhode Island for the last 4 years, and my office is literally next door to some of the kids' bedrooms. So when they're home for, a snow day or a vacation, the rule that we have is if I'm working, you do not come upstairs. Because there's been many times that they've been in their rooms and they're on their phones, or they have a friend upstairs and all of a sudden they start laughing or they get rambunctious or whatever happens, and it does cause a problem. The neighbors have to understand that you are working. I used to have a young neighbor who was like 10, and every day he came home from school, he thought I was available to, come out and play pretty much, or bake brownies or whatever. So the neighbors really, it took a while for both my neighbors in Connecticut as well as Rhode Island to understand that, I'm working. I mean, so you have to, and same with family too. I mean, it's easy for a family member who might be in an office setting to text you and say, hey, what's for dinner tonight? Or can you, I forgot to do something, or, your child forgets their homework, can you drop it off at school? It's very easy to, sidetrack your day because of things like that. But if you were in an office setting, as I remind my children all the time, I wouldn't be available to drive your homework to school or to do something for you. So you have to just assume that while I'm working, just pretend that I'm in an office environment. And I know,
And
Rita, I'm sure that happened to you as well.
oh yes, I would have my husband would call me and ask me what's for dinner, and I'm thinking, I'm not calling you at your office to ask you what's for dinner. So there's a percent, or what are you bringing home on the way for dinner? And I had colleagues and friends who would call because they figure, well, you're home, so of course you can talk. And I'm focused on what the work of the day is. One of our attendees has indicated a distraction they have, two distractions, three actually, twins and a spouse at home. So your point about setting those boundaries for family is an important one for someone who's got these types of distractions going on. It would be great if the spouse would be one who's managing the twins while you're trying to get some work done, or perhaps setting up certain times that you're with the twins or the spouse is with the twins in order to trade off perhaps a little bit.
So I also see that someone wrote in that a distraction too is the doorbell, and I think that's a great comment, because one day I wasn't expecting a package that was supposed to actually be signed, and the doorbell rang. And what do you do? So you have to think about that. So this person mentions they actually have a sign on their front door. What I tell people is, because they can't really hear it too well, I'll say, honk once in the driveway, and that will indicate that someone's outside. But I think that, the idea of having a sign at the front door is not a bad idea, or, a sign that says, you can ring the doorbell from 8 to 12 or whatever the hours may be. But, you do have to get creative, and, usually what happens is it happens once, a distraction, and then you learn to correct it. So I think the doorbell comment is very true.
And someone else has a question, which I think is also a good action. It's what are your thoughts on leaving your cell phone in another room and check it during breaks? Texts from family and friends are a distraction. And I know when I need to focus, my cell phone's in another room
My
because
cell
of those.
my cell phone's in another room right now myself. I agree with that. The problem is that, and this is not even, this is also if you're in an office setting, is that such things as texting mentally takes you off of what you're doing. So it's not just even the noise factor. So if you're on a call and then the cell phone rings, or you can hear that text beep, it's also it mentally takes you off of what you're doing, and it takes you that much longer to get back on track. And my children, I have three, actually two go to Bryant. They get onto these group texts, and the next thing you know, my phone's beeping left and right, and I tell them, look, I can't deal with this right now. I'll talk to you all later, because it does get a little cumbersome after a while, and mentally, as I said, it takes you off track. So it's a good idea to, but make sure everyone's clear on the hours that you set that you are willing to respond to a text message or a phone call. Some of the other distractions, and again, I can talk from personal experience, household chores. I've interviewed candidates. Actually, one woman admitted to me that she was late on a conference call because she was cleaning her floor. Household chores, it takes 5 minutes in a lot of cases to do a household chore, but you get kind of roped into it, and the next thing you've lost an hour. So again, you have to set your parameters on what the hours are that you're going to work. Or if you want to squeeze in a household chore, like I said before, that maybe you take a break and you go downstairs and throw the wash into the dryer, but that's all you do. You might fold the laundry at the end of the day. But household chores definitely can throw off your schedule, and so you have to make sure that you make a to-do list and figure out how much time something takes and then allocate accordingly. Landscapers, this time of year we don't have to really worry about that, but once the leaf blowers start, it's a real problem. One of my neighbors across the street, he has an impeccable lawn, and he's out with a leaf blower daily, which is a problem in the springtime and the fall when I have the window open. So the second I hear that leaf blower, I even see that he's home from work, and I pretty much know his hours. I shut the window and figure out something else. I have another neighbor actually who plays the piano, and they're directly across the street from me. So, sometimes the piano is not a problem, but other times it is. So, the window tends to go up and down a lot during the course of the day if they're home. Another distraction is if you have a cleaning person. Make sure you schedule them when it makes sense. Don't try to work on a project or a conference call when you have your cleaning person in your home. It's very distracting to hear the vacuum go off or things like that, or the banging around, or if they sing or whatever they do. It can be, it can mess your day up. Now, an option to that is if the cleaning person's going to be in, let's say, on a Friday from 9 to 12, maybe you take your iPhone with a headset and go over to a coffee shop and work on a project there or something like that. So that's another option to get you out of the home for a short period of time and get your house clean at the same time. Errands. The nice thing that I always find is I try to dovetail an errand off of a meeting. So if I have a meeting, on the way over, on the way back, I might try to squeeze an errand in. But as we all know, you get to some place and there's a line or there's something going on, and again, it messes up your schedule. So schedule your errands and put a time allocation to them. And if for some reason, you're running late on a conference call or whatever, and you don't really have the time for that errand, then I strongly suggest that you abandon it for now and do it later. Boredom. I don't know. I'm very busy, so I don't really get bored very often. But when it is a beautiful day outside, or I'm working on a project that I really don't want to work on, or I've hit a roadblock on the project, boredom does set in. So again, my way to deal with that is I may email someone and say, hey, do you have time for a 5-minute phone call? So I might pick up the phone to a friend, but I really limit it, and I tell them ahead of time I'm limiting it. So it's just a quick, hi, how are you, just to kind of break the day up so that I can just, regroup mentally and get back in straight. But, if you know what makes you bored, make sure that you, know your time cycles. Like, I'm a morning person, so I'm at my desk most days at 7:30 in the morning. That's when I like to write. That's when I put together, presentations like this, things like that. So definitely know when your peaks and valleys are in terms of how your energy is and all of that, and hopefully that will help reduce the boredom factor. Working out of your home can affect your waistline, and I'm not kidding when I say that. And what I mean by that is that when you do take that break, it's very easy to go downstairs and grab food. And I am a culprit of that. So there are days that when I look at how much calorie intake I've taken, especially when I've maybe have been bored a little bit, that I've eaten way too many calories. So make sure that you have, healthy snacks in your home. Don't buy bags of chips if you know that by the end of the day you'll eat a full bag. When I worked in Connecticut, luckily I worked above my garage. I did have a small refrigerator in there, but it was really for, like water and things like that. I really did not keep snacks in my office. So the only time I actually went over to the house to eat was at lunchtime. But now that I work, one flight up and I don't have to go outside, I do find it is a huge distraction because I'll go downstairs and grab something, or maybe I'll start to try to prep for dinner, and I'll nibble along the way. So just be very careful because eating can be a huge distraction and it can add to your bottom line in terms of your waste.
I like the way you say that bottom line. I would also offer that conversely, you could end up not eating enough or not eating properly. There have been times, and like you, I'll start early, so it could be 7:30, it could be 5:30 a.m., depending upon when I've gotten up and what needs to be done. And then all of a sudden, my stomach is growling, and I'm thinking it's all of a sudden, but it's actually been 5 hours. And I realize, oh my goodness, I haven't eaten. So now there's the distraction of I need to stop what I'm doing so that I can get some sustenance.
Very true. So yeah, we'll be talking a little bit more about why and how you get up from your desk.
Mm-hmm.
So I really don't have to say much on social media. We all know that that's a huge distraction no matter where you are, between being on Facebook and all of that. So again, if you want to take a break, put a timer on your phone or get a physical timer, and say I'm going to work on this for X amount of time. If you are self-employed like myself and you're looking to promote your business or whatever, again, you can get lost very quickly. So I have a friend who's actually America's LinkedIn lady, and she always says 17 minutes of media, to be on social media 17 minutes a day. And it's amazing when you set a timer and just focus on that for 17 minutes, you actually can get a lot accomplished. But then the point is, once that timer goes off, that's it for the day. So it's always I've always found that a great piece of advice because you really can get a lot accomplished, and you you shut it down and it's one less thing to worry about. And again, that goes back to maybe putting your phone in a different room. I'd be interested to hear if people want to write in about some other time wasters that they've come across.
Well, Beth,
Beautiful. Go
there are a
ahead.
couple, right along your question, there are a couple of people who've written in some recommendations. So there's one person who indicated that over the summer or school breaks, they rent a desk at a local virtual office. And for them, sometimes that little bit of money is worth the peace of mind of not having the distraction of family around. And someone else indicated children, when they're leaving for school or coming home from school, they make it a point to get everything critical done as soon as the children leave and then finish up just before the children come home.
And again, that talks about energy cycles and when we're most productive. I agree with that. I think that if you know that your child is going to be at school for X hours, definitely get those types of things done. But let's say that maybe you have some reading to do and now they're in bed and you want to read from, say, 7 to 8 o'clock on a project, uh, and it works for you, then that's also a good idea as well. Rita, are there any other time wasters or suggestions people have made?
No, I'm scrolling through and I don't see anything else yet
Okay,
because
so
the
let's
ones
move.
you've mentioned are already covered in the chat.
Okay, good. All right, so let's move on here. So you have to create your own water cooler, and maybe I'm dating myself. I don't know if a lot of offices have water coolers anymore, but it's not just for social reasons. It's exchanging of ideas. It gives you a break. It gives you a mental break. Besides a physical one, it also just, might clear your head. You can get very creative by taking a mental break. So you have to create your own water cooler when you're working out of your home. When I first started working out of my home, I was new to Fairfield, Connecticut, and so I really didn't know a lot of people. And so the kind of the standing joke amongst my family and friends was is the only person I saw, or the only people I saw, was the garbage guy and the mail person. And then when I moved to Rhode Island, the same thing pretty much happened because I didn't know a lot of people in Rhode Island in my town. And the only person I saw was the garbage guy and the mail person. So you have to kind of branch out from there. It is good, though, to get to know your mail person because both my mail persons in both locations knew I was self-employed. And it was funny. The one in New York, in Connecticut, he would actually yell up to me because my mailbox was at the back of my house, and he would yell up to me. He's like, "Beth, you have a check." So he was always very aware of when money was coming in. But it was a great relationship that we had. And the mail person I have here now also, if a package comes or something, she will ring the doorbell because she knows that I'm looking out for something. She's always very good about that. So it is good to really get to know your mail person. Beyond that, though, you need to schedule time outside of the office, and I can't stress this enough. If you haven't checked out meetups, definitely do that. I mean, and I'm not suggesting it has to be always professional. I'm actually on the board of the East Bay Chamber of Commerce here in Rhode Island. We have a women's group called WeBond that meets every Tuesday from noon to 1. I don't go every week, but I know it's there. And Tuesday, Wednesdays is that's kind of a nice time to get out of the office for maybe an hour and meet with other people. But the meetups are wide-ranging from scrapbooking and sports to singles to whatever. But the idea is that you're meeting other people and it gets you out of the house. And if there's a meetup group that you haven't seen that you think would be of value, you can certainly start them. They're not very difficult to start. But all you do is go on meetup.com and type in different things that you're interested in. It can be even something like wine and see what pops up in your area. But I really, especially moving to a new area, that was very critical for me with this women's group because I really got to, learn more about the area and resources and what was available to me. And I've made a lot of friends in the process. So that kind of jumps into the next group is organizations. There's many organizations out there that you can join. Some cost more than others, needless to say. But again, it gets you out of the office, on a pre-scheduled basis. I mean, most of these organizations have scheduled meetings both, during the day. They have, or like tonight, actually, our chamber has their business after hours for an hour and a half. So it's important to occasionally dress up and get yourself out the door because, sitting in your sweatpants or your jeans every day in and out does get lonely. And again, it builds your network, which is always important. I'm a firm believer in starting your own water cooler. So in terms of the sense that, you can create a breakfast club, send an email out to people that you might know in the area and say, hey, let's get together for breakfast once a month at X place. Or let's do it at lunchtime, depending on what people's schedules are or the children's schedules. Mastermind groups is another way to go. Like-minded people getting together to talk about, business topics. Unfortunately, in Rhode Island, at least where I am, there's no gym classes at lunchtime. But what I did, which I realized in Connecticut, is I really analyzed my week. I sat down, and we're going to talk a little bit more about time management in a minute. But I realized that on Wednesdays at lunchtime and Wednesday afternoons in general, that no one really calls me. I mean, if I'm putting out recruiting calls, I get people on the phone, but my phones in general tend to be on the quieter side for whatever reason. So I used to run to a Zumba class in Connecticut at 12 o'clock every Wednesday, and pretty much no one ever knew I was gone. And yes, I was in my gym clothes all day, so I made sure I didn't have Skype calls or things like that, or I could throw a shirt over my gym clothes. But it was a great way, again, to get some exercise, get away from the food, give my brain a mental check or relaxation bit. But it was really very, very healthy. So unfortunately, the gyms around here don't have a lunchtime class, but it's a beautiful day today, so probably I will head out and take a small walk around the neighborhood or something like that. But again, we all need motivators, so maybe you find someone else who's self-employed or somebody that you can maybe meet and take that quick walk with or whatever. So, buddying up or finding a partner is always beneficial. Another way to create your water cooler is volunteering. And again, this can be, more on a professional side, like, like I do a lot of work at Bryant University. I do seminars and presentations to students. I drink things through my chamber, but also it could just be helping out more in some other type of community service type of thing. But again, it makes you feel good. It gets you out of the office. You meet new people, find out kind of how they operate, and it builds bonds. So it's a good way to do that. And then the last piece, especially in this, for a small state, we certainly have different things that I can attend. The Rhode Island Small Business Journal, for the people in the area, you can get on their website, risbj.com, and pretty much you can get an email weekly, and it tells you every event that's going on in Rhode Island and kind of into Massachusetts. And I'm sure in other locations you can do the same thing. But to have that weekly email telling me everything that's going on has been really helpful, because then I can kind of plan accordingly that, hey, I can go out of the office, 2 hours a week, so I can do one business breakfast and maybe one, conference or whatever. And conferences, again, are very important, because to be out of the office one full day is really not going to hurt anybody. So I suggest that you try to do at least a conference or a mini conference maybe every quarter or at least twice a year, because, again, you can be very insular, so it's important to do things like that. So now let's talk about resources. So let's say you are in very busy mode. Maybe you're an accountant, or right now I seem to be very busy on the recruiting side or something. And I just can't get out of my house. There's just way too much going on, or if I go out to do something, it's just going to take too much time. So here's some resources that you may or may not be aware of, but they certainly come in handy. Staples.com, of course, they will deliver for free. I think it's over $50. I don't even know if they charge anymore for delivery, but it's usually 24 to 48 hours that you can get, office supplies delivered to your home. A new one that's out there that I think is fantastic is Box.com. Box was actually featured on the Today Show amongst some other places. The person is a 35-year-old owner. He actually pays for his employees' children's educations, and he pays for his employees' weddings. Boxed sells mostly, packaged food items, but they also sell other things as well. But there is free delivery. So the first time I tried Boxed, I actually had 70 pounds worth of stuff come to my home, and I only know that because when they send you the email telling you when it's coming, they tell you the weight. And so I had 2 big boxes that totaled 70 pounds, and especially when the weather's lousy too, it's great to have that all delivered to your door and not pay a dime in terms of shipping. You don't have to go to the post office anymore to buy stamps, so USPS.com, also you can get, order stamps online and have those delivered to your home. As we know, pretty much anything can be delivered to your home, but I'm finding that these three, I've used others, have been the most successful for me. Another piece, which I've recently tried and I really enjoy, is Blue Apron. I know there's some other companies out there, but I've tried Blue Apron. So Blue Apron, you go online, they tell you, you put in your, the types of proteins you eat. Like I only eat fish, and I order, meals for 2 people. It's just my daughter and I right now, and it's delivered to your home, extremely well boxed up. Meaning there's ice packs and everything, and there's 3 dinners there, with directions, all of it right there, and so you don't have to think about what I'm going to make for dinner. It's all there. It is a lot of chopping, I will admit to that. I think there's some others that are a little less prep work. But, I was on a business trip. I came home, on a Thursday night. I'd been gone for 3 days. Friday morning, there it is, the box sitting on my doorstep, and I didn't have to worry about, going out shopping as soon as I got home. Another resource is the human resources piece. So I have hired college students. Actually, I've had high school students too, but I think college students, because they drive, is probably more beneficial, that have run errands for me or have done filing, things along those lines. Back when my children were little, they knew that it could range from professional type work to maybe babysitting for an hour to running to the supermarket. I actually had one person who would he went out and bought office furniture for me because we were redecorating the office. So college students really do come in handy. And you don't necessarily have to pay for every college student, but it's a win-win, in my opinion, because you can learn from them as much as they can learn from you. Needless to say, they're very social media savvy, but they also are very good with project management. So they might have ideas on how you can better handle a project, or they could do a piece of the project. If you're self-employed, one of the things that I hear constantly is, well, I can't afford somebody. You really can't afford not to use somebody. My father always had an expression, to make money, you have to spend money. So if your billing rate, as an example, is $100 an hour, and you hire a college student, I'm just going to make the numbers easy, at $10 an hour, for every hour you do something that you could farm out to a college student, you're actually losing $90 an hour. So, that adds up over time. So really think about things that maybe you could offset and give to, delegate to someone else. My office manager, who actually lives in Connecticut, she's an at-home mother. I work around her schedule, meaning I know when her school schedules are. So if I want to do a big project, we have very flexible hours, so she knows that if it's, they just had February break, so I didn't really give her a lot of work then, but I knew that as soon as she came off February break, she'd be looking for more hours. So at-home mothers work extremely well, or these days at-home fathers. Family. My father, up until the time he passed away, was my business manager. He handled all my bookkeeping. My mother actually did some filing. When my children were younger, they actually did all my PowerPoint presentations, so which I think gave my children a good foundation on how businesses are run. So they learned at a very early age how to manage a business, so that's been good for them. An interesting thing, too, with resources, and that kind of goes into the next thing with the bartering. My neighbor in Connecticut he was an at-home dad, and when things like snow days came up, those lovely days when you have a full work schedule and all of a sudden you have little ones at home, he and I he would take the children in the morning, and then at lunchtime we would switch, and I would take the children, his child and mine, in the afternoon. So definitely try to come up with some resources that, we can work off of each other. I've also bartered with people on just services. Maybe I'll help them with something that they're looking to do, like maybe their resume needs to be written, or they need to be prepped on a call or something like that, and then in turn they'll barter with me. So it doesn't necessarily have to be dollar for dollar, but again, that's why you need to build your network of resources so that maybe you can get into a barter situation. Time management tools. I'm pretty rudimentary. I actually have a sticky pad that sits on my desk, and when I start a project, I put the time down. So this morning I actually started at 7:20, and I worked on a project for 15 minutes. I wrote down 7:20 to 7:35, and I put down the name of the project. And I do this through the whole day, and then what I end up doing is at the end of the day adding up my time. So that's something else to think about. I know there's a lot of apps out there that you can use, but again, you can keep it pretty simple. We all know how Fitbit works. When I was researching this, getting it done kept coming up. I'm not familiar with it personally, but I know that a lot of people seem to recommend it. And then, of course, Franklin Covey, and there's other types of time management systems. But if you are one that easily gets distracted, going back to the earlier part of this presentation, then you really might want to seriously think about some kind of time management system there.
And Beth, before we move on to the next slide, we do have a couple of recommendations from our attendees. So one of them recommended an app called Time Tasker, said it's a free app. There is Upwork, which is a resource for securing virtual assistants. And another person controls their Facebook by using Facebook Newsfeed Eradicator. I love it because just sitting there watching that can be tremendous. One app that I recommend that I've used is called Timesheet. And it performs the same function that you were just mentioning. You log in the project and your start time and your end time, and it counts up how much time you're spending on each project and per day. So those are some very helpful tips from our attendees.
Excellent. That's why I like this being interactive. So that's terrific. Okay,
Hmm.
great. So other things to consider. Location of your office. I do not recommend your bed as being part of your office. As I said before, people do that. But again, depending on where you work, uh, you could possibly, maybe you're the type that likes to write in bed. Maybe that piece you do in your bed. I really don't suggest phone calls in your bed, but as I said, I have colleagues that have been doing it for years and it works for them. Some people actually, if they're in an apartment type of situation, they may use the kitchen table. Again, I don't necessarily recommend that. I think it's very important to have a dedicated space for your office. And that could be something as simple as an armoire. I've seen some really cool, like they look like armoires. You open them up and they have like all these little pockets for papers and your laptop and all, and you can stick a chair in there and the whole thing. But your location of your office is really critical, taking into a lot of things that we just talked about. I mean, to be honest with you, having my office next door to my two of my three children is not the ideal situation. Luckily, they're older, but I think it would have been a real problem when they were littler. So, some people work in the basement. I like a lot of natural light, so that wouldn't work for me as well. But again, you really have to think about the location of your office. The other
And
thing,
that's an excellent point. I did that with mine too to share with the group as well. And I made sure I took one of the bedrooms and converted it to an office. And at the end of my workday, whatever time that is, I physically close the door so that when I'm walking past it, I don't get distracted by seeing the work that's waiting for me sitting there too.
And that's a very good point because my office here in Rhode Island is much smaller than what I had in Connecticut because I had the whole above the garage in Connecticut. Here I have, I call it the closet. So I had to really get creative because I went from having four desks to one and not as much file cabinet space. So maybe not everything fits in your office because mine doesn't. I have a file cabinet for old projects in the basement. I keep my file folders and things like that in another room in a closet. But then I also, I have children's stuff, so I have a three-pocket thing that sticks on the wall, and each child has a pocket. So if they're looking for, my daughter just got her license last week, I have a copy of her license sitting in her pocket. So if, God forbid, something happened to her license, it will, she knows that that's in her cubby or her box. So you have to really, and if you're not good with professional or with organizing, definitely hire a professional organizer because they do come in very, very handy. The other thing to consider is, depending on the type of work you do, be careful with your landline. I know some people do work on cell phones. I'm a big proponent of working on a landline because I think the calls are more clear, especially if you're making calls overseas. But the other issue is that calls sometimes come in at 2 a.m., and I've had this happen. I've made calls overseas. Next thing you know, it's 2 a.m., and the phone's going off, and everybody in the house has been awakened. So just be very careful with that you turn your phone off, turn your computer off, and as Rita said, you walk away. I actually have a picture that was taken with the chamber um, with my ribbon cutting that I put on the door of my office to kind of remind me sometimes that this is an office. So whatever it takes for you to walk away, you really walk away, but turn up all the noise too, because I've been in situations where I'm downstairs right below my office and all of a sudden I hear the phone ring and mentally I go back to the office. I may not physically go in there, but mentally I go back to the office. The next thing is, needless to say, is to develop a routine. But one of the things that I thought was interesting, I learned this about a year and a half ago. I heard two women speak who work at Hasbro, and they actually block off time to, they call it creative time. And again, look at your schedule for the week. If there is time in your week that you can block off every week at the same time, that you can use it as creative time. That could be maybe reading some interesting things or doing this webinar or professional development or just kind of brainstorming, whatever that is. I really think that that's important because, again, ideas get generated when we're, having that kind of mental, break from some of the day-to-day stuff that we do. And, and it could be that maybe you get on the phone with someone else too and kind of, as I said, brainstorm or whatever. But having that creative time is actually re-energized and it starts to reduce the boredom factor because sometimes that creative time is just coming up with other ideas on how not to be bored. So just think about that as something to think, that you should think about. So Rita kind of mentioned it before, but I'm going to bring it up again, is sitting too much. You should get up from your desk between every 45 and 55 minutes. And also you need to get out of your house every day. And I don't mean just to walk to the mailbox and come back in, because you can really get into hermit mode, and it's happened to me. So as I said, I speak from experience. There's a new expression out there called "sitting is the new smoking," and having that sedentary lifestyle can really harm your health. So definitely get up from your desk every 45 to 55 minutes. Stretch. There's some great stretching exercises you can get online. But definitely move around a bit, But again, if it becomes too much time, you have to rein it in. So if you have to put a timer on it, whatever. But just make sure you get up from your desk. Um, you know, the other thing is that if you are in a corporate setting, but you are working out of your home, it is important to schedule FaceTime. And I don't necessarily mean always Skype. I mean, if the office is close enough, or, definitely go into the office periodically and show your face. Because that interaction, reading people's body language, all of that is very important because, not only do they get to know you more each time, but it builds trust. And if you're looking to get promoted, kind of out of sight, out of mind happens. And I've heard this way too many times from candidates that I've worked with or people that I'm coaching on why they're looking for a new opportunity, because they've been passed over for a promotion because people have kind of forgotten about them, or they're not aware of what they're working on. So definitely check in, make sure that your supervisor, your boss, is really very clear on what you're getting accomplished. Maybe it's sending an email once a day or whatever, however the two of you determine how you're going to check in. But, if you're moving into a home situation, you may want to you definitely want to have a conversation on how are we going to check in with each other? How am I going to understand what the expectations are? How are we going to communicate if things change? Because I've also had the situation where I was coaching 4 people, and I knew the director of the company. He had brought me in to coach these people, and the feedback that I was getting from the 4 managers is every time Mike emails me, I feel like I have to stop everything I'm doing and respond to him. So when I went back to Mike and said that this was, an issue, he said, "Wow, I didn't even realize I was doing that." So, again, as long as the expectations are set right from the start, I mean, they certainly can be tweaked over time, that reduces, ambiguity and frustrations and all of that. So I strongly suggest that you have that conversation. Being accessible does not mean that you are available 24/7. There was a great story that a Brian alum, who's a very senior level executive in a Fortune 50 company, told me once, and I thought it was a great visual. Is you have tennis balls in your life and you have crystal balls. And when a tennis ball drops, think about it. It bounces, it goes under a chair, you can retrieve it later. But when a crystal ball comes to the floor, it shatters and you can never get it back. So you really have to set boundaries. If you're working, till 5 o'clock, let's say, and then you go cook dinner and your child's telling you a story, or you have to go to the school play, or there's some event that you've been looking forward to going, and all of a sudden, your phone goes off and they're telling you have to go look at something on your computer, you can't get those crystal ball times back. So you really have to make sure that there's times where, yes, you might be a little more flexible and willing to look at something or work a little bit later or take that phone call. But a lot of times, again, you have to set boundaries and make sure that everyone is very clear on what those boundaries are. We're starting to run out of time, so I want to do this next poll just very quickly. So we've covered a lot today, and the thing is that if you don't act on this webinar in the next 48 hours, I can guarantee you that most of you will not do anything, because we all go to lovely conferences and informative webinars and workshops and all of that. And what happens? We get all these notes, we're all motivated, we get back, we put the stuff on the shelf, and it stops right there. So I'm encouraging you, maybe I'm throwing out a dare to you, however you want to call it, but I'd like you to do something in the next 48 hours to improve, your work situation at home. So, definitely think about what you can do in the next 48 hours. It can be very small. I'm not suggesting that you have to do something major, but it might be something as simple as investigating the different apps that we talked about tracking time, or maybe reaching out to a family member and saying, I really need some help here. Could we create a situation where maybe you come in once a week and help me with something? Or you have that conversation with your boss. So do we have some feedback so far?
Not yet, but we do have some comments, though. Not yet on the poll, but we do have some comments about what people are doing to bring back the water cooler. Such, there's one person who walks with women from her church early in the morning. For time management, there was a comment about time management deadlines being fluid when you're in a work from home situation. So this person talks about setting deadlines a day early so that you don't end up at the last minute saying, oh my goodness, here's this deadline that I've didn't meet. Let's see, we do have some poll results. So folks are committing to tracking time better. Equally distributed. 1/3 tracking time better, 1/3 identifying ways to stay motivated, and 1/3 utilizing one or more resources we discussed.
Excellent. Oh, that's good to hear. So again, as I mentioned, rewards when I coach people, I find that rewards are very important. So if you do what I have asked of you and done something in the next 48 hours, tie a reward to it. It might be that you looked at the time tracker apps that we talked about. So what will be the reward after that? It might be something like getting a mani-pedi. It might be doing something with your child. It might be going to buy yourself a new book, whatever it may be. But definitely tie a reward to it, because that's how we stay motivated, is having those rewards behind it.
And as one of our attendees has pointed out, it takes 21 days to build a habit. So if you try something new and it doesn't work the first couple of times, don't give up. Stick with it. Get started within the next 48 hours, yes.
Right, and that's again why you want to build your network, because we've created some new ideas through this webinar. So interaction is very important with other people. So anyway, I do love working out of my home. I think it's a great way. It works for me. I have worked in an office setting in the past, but there's definitely pros and cons. And I've learned a few things today, so hopefully everybody else has. If you have any comments, you certainly can reach out to myself or to Rita. And just a little bit more about me. And I'd love to hear other feedback on this presentation. So thank you for today.
Great working with you as always, Beth.
Thank you. You too, Rita.
Awesome. And with that, this is Tim, and on behalf of the Bryant Alumni Association, I too would like to thank Rita and Beth for a great presentation today. But most of all, I'd like to thank all of you for joining us. Please look for our survey in your email. This concludes today's webinar. Thank you, everybody, and have a great afternoon.